We're going to break this PowerPoint up into a few different videos. We're going to start with, first of all, the function of the respiratory system. So we know that exchanging blood gases is the obvious job of the lungs, but really we're working on a microscopic level. If you think back to learning about organelles, you may recall that mitochondria help to make ATP. So what was a necessary ingredient of making ATP? You may recall that it was oxygen. And the way we get oxygen into our system is through exchanging those blood gases at the lungs. So in order to transport oxygen out to our cells where those mitochondria are located, we'll also need to employ the cardiovascular system. You may also recall that mitochondria make a waste product called carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is also moved out of our cells and into our cardiovascular system, and then removed from our bodies by way of our respiratory system. So in reality here, we're not just breathing to supply our lungs with oxygen, but that oxygen is necessary for cellular processes and in making ATP. So we are driven to breathe by the need for oxygen for mitochondria and the need to expel that CO2 as a gas waste product. So we're going to summarize here. These are 4 events of respiration. This video is going to cover pulmonary ventilation only. A separate video will cover external respiration, gas transport, and internal respiration. And for now, I'm only going to summarize these 4 events. The first event here is pulmonary ventilation, and this process is simply known as breathing, moving air into and out of your lungs. We're going to cover that in details in just a moment. And again, just summarizing here, external respiration is a gas exchange that occurs between pulmonary blood, those would be pulmonary capillaries, and alveoli, which are the air sacs in the lungs. You'll notice here, looking closely at the alveolus, there is oxygen that moves into the blood stream right here. We call that loading of the oxygen. And then you'll notice that we're unloading CO2. That means that we're moving CO2 from the bloodstream to the alveolus to be expelled from the respiratory system. Keep that in mind. Oxygen is loaded into the bloodstream. Carbon dioxide is unloaded from the bloodstream, because when we talk about systemic circulation and internal respiration, that gas exchange will actually be an opposite. All right, so this is familiar. We've already done the blood flow through the heart. We know that arteries carry oxygenated blood away from the heart, and of course veins carry deoxygenated or carbon dioxide rich blood back to the heart. So what you're looking at here, this circuit between the heart, the lungs, and the heart and the body, these pulmonary and systemic circuits are what we call respiratory gas transport. This is how the cardiovascular system participates in distributing blood gases around the body. All right, so just to remind you, external respiration occurs where? That is between alveoli and pulmonary capillaries. What type of gas is loaded into the bloodstream here? Okay, think about going on a trip. You're going to load oxygen into the bloodstream. We will talk more about all of this business down below with oxyhemoglobin a little bit later. And then next, what are we unloading from the bloodstream? Think about coming home from a trip. What do you get out of your car? You get out your suitcase, you unload it from the car. Likewise, we unload CO2 into our alveolar air sacs, and then that is exhaled. We get rid of that waste gas. Okay, now compare that with internal respiration. Like I mentioned earlier, the process here is opposite. This time, your cells need oxygen, so this time we're unloading that oxygen, giving it to our cells to make ATP. And at the very same time, we're diffusing CO2, loading it into the bloodstream. We'll talk about this equation a little bit later, and we will transport that CO2 back to the heart, where it can then be exhaled once it's sent to the lungs. So the key thing to remember here is loading and unloading is opposite in external and internal respiration. Okay, so we will cover these gas transport processes and external and internal respiration in a little more detail in a separate video.